the people who have, say, psoriatic arthritis. And psoriasis is a strange rash that you get on your skin, but the rash is just a manifestation of autoimmune disease. And so if you have, this is a disease where your immune system attacks you, and there are a whole raft of these autoimmune diseases, each of them nasty in its own way. So psoriasis affects joints and affects skin. Then there's rheumatoid arthritis, which is the best known, and it affects tiny little joints primarily, but it can affect any joints, and it has other manifestations in your body. It may affect some of your organs, as does SLE, systemic lupus, and there are a whole series of other autoimmune diseases with long, unpronounceable names, describing different ways that your immune system can attack you and cause inflammation and damage to an area of your body. And if we move aside from the autoimmune diseases, then you have degenerative diseases and things like osteoarthritis, where you damage a joint and the joint, you actually damage the cartilage, and then your body tries to respond to heal it, but the healing response is inadequate, and the healing response, again, just like the autoimmune response, sets up inflammation, and the inflammation, which releases cytokines, which are damaging, and killer cells, which are damaging, then starts to actually attack your own body. And with these conditions, just like with Ehlers-Danlos, with the recurrent damaging of joints and other soft tissues, you end up with a very powerful, chronic, ongoing, peripheral source of pain, a nociceptive source somewhere in your body, either in multiple places, like say with rheumatoid, where it's symmetrical, affecting small joints on both sides, or just one big joint, like with osteoarthritis, or in your hip or your knee. So you end up with a very powerful, chronic, peripheral source of pain. Now, what people have studied, and this has been over the last 20 years, and the condition that's been studied the most is rheumatoid arthritis, but there are many other studies looking at psoriatic arthritis, looking at systemic lupus, and so on and so on. All these, and osteoarthritis especially of the knee. There's been a lot of studies of that, where what they have noticed is that a proportion of people start off with their peripheral cause of pain, which is obvious. So if we took rheumatoid, which is the kind of, we'll use as our exemplar, the rheumatoid arthritis, you have a series of hot joints, which are swollen, hot, inflamed, becoming damaged. You do your blood tests, and the blood tests show high inflammatory markers, high antibodies against rheumatoid antibodies, many different sorts, and so on. So there's a lot of activity going on. Right. Now, as medical science has become better and better at treating these chronic conditions, these chronic inflammatory conditions. So you go and see a rheumatologist, who then puts you on heavy-duty medication, and what happens is that the activity and the inflammation and so on start to decrease, but in a proportion of people, and this proportion in different studies varies between about 18%, 17, 18%, up to 45% of people, they instead of getting better, they get worse. And what actually happens, and this is now recognized, in the beginning it was puzzling, people didn't understand. Wow, okay, I don't really understand. Your disease is looking better, and the person starts saying, I feel worse, I feel terrible. And what actually happens is that the pain that they've got, so if we took, say, somebody's knee, someone's got osteoarthritis in their knee, the knee inflammation settles, but the pain starts to spread. So that's the first sign, that the pain starts to spread, and then they start to become sensitized. They start becoming achy all over in different places. And then what's happened is that the pain messages which came from that peripheral source bombarded their pain system, bombarded their spinal cord, and secondary central sensitization has become turned on. And then all the things that we've studied, you know, that are there in my modules, and that is now becoming so apparent with neuroplasticity, is that as the pain messages smash against the dorsal horn, that first synapse turns on, the amplifier turns on. Then the talkative little interneurons start to spread the message. And as they start to spread the pain message, what you feel is that the pain's no longer in your knee, but it has spread. It's spread into your thigh. It has spread whichever segment has become has become amplified. You will start to feel the same kind of pain in that segment. And when people have done, and there's a whole series of studies, and what I'll do is while I was going through the literature, I found a wonderful review study which was clearly explained in English, that without a lot of jargon, which I'll put up on the website. So the first thing is that people start to become sensitive close to. So there's a word called hyperalgesia, which is when you press, not enough to hurt, but you're pressing, and it's a firm press that actually causes pain. If you push hard enough to cause pain, it's much worse than other parts of your body. So they get hyperalgesia firstly just around, and then it starts to occur on the other side, and then it starts to occur all over your body. Then they get allodynia, which is that just touching, soft touch, or just cool temperature, or just a little bit of warmth is perceived as pain. And that is the absolute cardinal sign that you can, when you examine somebody, that they are sensitized. The only other thing that will do that is if you get sunburnt, you know. Otherwise, if there's nothing else going on, the joint is quieter, it's a lot happier, all the blood tests are good, but the whole area just becomes more and more sensitive. This person has central sensitization and the spread of it, and then you find that when you press around using an algometer, just using a fixed amount of pressure all over their body, they will start to get more tender. They then, in the studies, have now then looked at the neuroplasticity, what happens up in your brain, and there's increased blood flow to areas that we know very well, the anterior cingulate cortex, the prefrontal cortex, the down into the amygdala, into the midbrain. All of this area has increased flow into it, and those areas that get wound up, that get taken over by the chronic pain process, all start to light up. And the chronic pain process is now invading areas that should be doing other things in your brain. And so people become, the biggest thing, sleep deprived, so lack of quality sleep. The pain becomes more widespread. There's significant fatigue. There are autonomic symptoms that start to occur. And when we know these, this is the autonomic subtype of chronic pain. So irritable bowel, irritable bladder, hot and cold, and palpitations, and so on. Cognitive effects. So these people say, look, I just can't think clearly, and huge mood changes. So often people become increasingly anxious and become depressed. And all of these, so that when you look at the disability that is related to people who have rheumatoid arthritis, who have horrible, painful joints, and they can't move their hands, and they're awfully sore, that is debilitating, and that is bothering, and that does trouble people. But when you compare that to somebody who has significant central sensitization, there is no comparison. The people, when you do the measures, the people who are sensitized are much more disabled, much more unhappy. And the problem with that is that for the joints, there's a pretty good treatment, heavy duty, but there's a lot of treatments. For people who have painful, say you've got a sore back, or you've got a sore neck, or for those people, there are 101 treatments. There are all the way from just waving your hands around, to laying your hands on, to putting machines on, to sticking needles, to cutting, and so on. All the things that people do for parts of the body that are obviously abnormal and inflamed or tender or something like that. There are all those treatments. But for the people who are sensitized, there's a few drugs, and those of you who've walked that walk know that the drugs for treating central sensitization are at best helpful and at worst terrible. So, if you can get 30 to 50% pain reduction, you are supremely lucky. So then it comes down to the stuff that we do in this community, in this club, that we are focusing on to reprogram your mind and your pain system so that you are able to change and turn down the amplification and distortion in using the same neuroplastic process that turned it on. So that's my long explanation. And so my answer, if you talk to your friend who has, say, Ehlers-Danlos, and what he or she says is, oh no, I just get this pain in my shoulder when I damage it, and that's really what I go along and I just get it. I go to my physio, or I go to my whoever, and I get a treatment, and then it settles a bit, and then I'm okay, and then I just injure something else, but it's okay. But then what we do isn't going to be of massive value to this person, because what they have is a peripheral cause. But if they say, oh no, I mean, this is driving, I have this horrible pain and I can't sleep, and it really affects my mood, and I'm tired all the time, and the pain is not only here but it spreads over, and it's the story that you know so well of central sensitization pain, then absolutely this person will be helped. And it doesn't matter what the original cause is. And that's the most important thing. Once central sensitization has that process, that neuroplastic process, has wound up and turned on, then whatever it's like all these causes pouring into your pain system, which then does this thing, which makes everything so much worse. So you have to treat. You can carry on treating that peripheral cause with whatever you need to, but you need to attend to the central cause of that person's pain. Otherwise, they will continue to suffer. And it's the same for every type of peripheral pain.